We're joined now by two Arise analysts, Dr. Sam Amadi and lawyer Frank Tietie. Thank you, both of you, for joining us on Newsnight. Let me start with you, Dr. Sam Amadi, and with the last, should I say performer now, Yusuf Tuga, Foreign Affairs Minister, saying the reason why Nigeria does not have ambassadors yet, or designated ambassadors, is owing to lack of funding. Is that good enough?
Well, I think first, Yusuf Tuga is a clear-minded person, so saying so means that's what it is. Okay, but the first question is, yes, maybe there's not enough, but there's no money, and again, it belies the idea that the economy is growing or that we are doing well. I mean, foreign policy is a critical component of even economic growth. If you look at Japan, one of their strategies was the Ministry of Trade and International Affairs. So they use trade. They use trade as a foreign policy as a driver of trade. And so a country like Nigeria that has big ambition, that's in terms of not just investment, and also not just in terms of geopolitical strength in the West African sub-region and Africa. I mean, that we don't have our diplomats in these centers of diplomatic relationship because we don't have the money for them to even travel. It's a story that really makes us look very weak, weaker than we think. I used to be a special advisor in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs years ago, and I can tell you that when we talk about citizen diplomacy, if you look across the country, even if you look at our economic crisis, they also relate to the lack of diaspora support. We've seen decline in diaspora financing. Again, if you don't have strong diplomatic centers, you will mobilize even diaspora, which is now a critical economic growth factor. Again, investment. We see Nigerian government officials travel to go 1 day, 2 days. But really, most of the work is done through public diplomacy. And so I think that, yes, it's an honest admission, but it speaks to our dwindling as a country. I mean, we used to be the loser, and little wonder we are losing control. We don't win West African region. We couldn't even persuade ECOWAS, the countries that broke out from ECOWAS with military rule. We basically becoming inconsequential in Africa and global, and that's what the story. So yes, it's true that it's been honest, but again, tragic that we can't deploy diplomats because we can't even pay for their fare. That's really tragic.
Well, let's bring in Frank. Frank, you've heard how Dr. Sam Amadi puts it, but quite frankly, looking at 1 year down the line, how much is so much, or too little rather, to making the ministers say we don't have good representatives in the name of ambassadors?
Well, I think it's just a further acknowledgement that the ambassadors in the first place have not been very useful. It also means that the foreign missions can be adequately run by the normal civil servants who are attached to them, whether the foreign missions in permanent missions to the United Nations, both at New York and Geneva, can actually be operated without sitting diplomats, that is ambassadors. The same thing applies to other missions right now that are attending to Nigerians across the world who have one consular service or the other that they require. Not much complaints have been coming. So beyond the acknowledgement that there's no money, there is a balance to the extent that there has been the services that the missions are supposed to render to Nigerians abroad have not actually failed woefully in that regard. So what the conclusion simply is that it's a way of dodging the appointment of ambassadors. And by the way, appointment of ambassadors beyond the issue of financing them is a reward mechanism within our political system. So the president realizes that it is more of a waste of funds rather than that can be avoided by simply overlooking it and then still getting the job done.
Right, gentlemen, let's quickly move to a very critical one, talking about the finance minister, Wale Edun. He's, of course, coordinator of the economy. He says, look, Tinubu is planning to unveil an emergency blueprint to revamp Nigeria's economy. In the same vein, he also said that Nigeria's economy is growing. It's moving in the right direction with a 2.98% growth. Dr. Sam Amadi, you understand the economy.
Well, I think
it is growing.
Yeah, I think in a sense, I mean, it depends on how you slice it. Right. In a sense, it's also a fall. I mean, if you look at the last quarter, fourth quarter of 2023, we did about 3 point, more than 3 points growth rate. And you can see that, yes, in a sense, if you do quarter one of 2023, yes, some increment. But again, it's generally some kind of decline. But again, look at what is driving it. We've got uptick in oil supply, okay? We've improved on that. We've seen also service sector. But the bad story is that agriculture and manufacturing is not doing well. And these are the growth centers that enable for more job creation, that have greater spillover effects in terms of rural prosperity. So I think that, in a sense, I think we're not doing very well in terms of, look, you look at investment coming in, whether from international, whether in the oil and gas sector, we're losing a lot to Angola and others. So that's not a very good picture. And again, as Dudley would say, three things matter. What's happening to poverty? What's happening to employment? And what's happening to inequality? So if you look at these three critical metrics of development, we're doing badly. We're doing badly. What's happened to poverty? We've seen increase, of course, the predictions about maybe 10 million more people will get into poverty in terms of the inflation, energy, spike in energy costs, the forex issues, I mean, loss of revenue, loss of well-being. Also, in terms of inequality, it's growing. In terms of employment, we're waiting for another of the MBS, but again, growing. I mean, anecdotally, you'll be shocked. So I think the narrative around the economy is doing well, it's not true. Even by government admission, I mean, the idea of emergency economic plan suggests that something needs to be done quickly. And again, let me say this. What I think is really missing in the economic blueprint is that there seems to be no strategic direction in terms of, not just managing. So far, we spent a lot of time managing with forex, dealing with how do we, deal with the naira dollar crisis, the foreign exchange crisis. How do we, the central bank is hitting hard on interest rate to drive down inflation. But again, we need to recover and say, how do we look at a much more macroeconomics, developmental focus to say, even in the short to medium term, how do we begin to energize the enablers for growth? Because invariably, this economy needs strategic and systematic growth to happen. And that's not what's missing here. You need coherence, you need to deal with the insecurity, you need to create some elite consensus, you need also to drive performance across all the sectors, and also layering. This is national economy, state economies are critical to helping us, have any real sense of real development. So always keep your eye on what's happening to inequality, what's happening to employment, and what's happening to poverty. That's really benchmark whether you're doing well in real terms.
Well, still on the economy, Frank, before we dig in deeper, let's hear from the Minister of Trade and see what exactly they've been doing in the last 1 year.
His Excellency, Mr. President, has laid the foundation to increase private equity capital formation, hence the reason for initiating the Nigeria Diaspora Fund. The Nigeria Diaspora remits between $20 to $25 billion annually, according to the World Bank. But these remittances have not been channeled intentionally to private equity. Therefore, the investment initiative by my ministry is creating the platform to target, mobilize, and utilize some of these funds into the productive economy.
Well, Frank, let's see if we can do this in about 2 minutes before we go on a short break. How do you put this together, talking about diaspora funding in a country where we haven't actually thought it wise to have our embassies and consulates working properly?
I think those are mere wishes that are not backed with strong will, in the sense that it's not realistic that the diasporans would bring money to Nigeria for the purpose of investment. Diaspora remittances are basically money sent for upkeep to families and dependents of persons abroad. Not necessarily when it shifts from that dependency approach to that of investment, there's not enough confidence among Nigerians abroad to channel money to Nigerian government or to a Nigerian investor investment setup. It's very, very unlikely that Nigerians abroad will do that. So that is a mere wish. It's not easily realizable. Again, the structures, the investment structures in this country do not support the certainty of the kind of investor confidence, I would say, that Nigerians abroad would have. Because take a look at the regime, the tax regime. Take a look at the common phrase of ease of doing business, which has been very elusive for a very long time. It's very difficult to do business in our country with a large number of taxes, and then you also see comatose services, especially a simple service like the corporate registry that is not responsive at every time. During the day, most of the time, you realize that the corporate registry servers are always down. I'm talking about CAC, always down. You can hardly pay many of those taxes that they ask for, whether it's annual returns or one form of application or the other. Or not to talk about registration. There's this much talk about even small businesses like POS operators that are compelled to register. They are unable to do so because the corporate registry portal is not working. So the Nigerians abroad know the huge difference of the state or the decadent state of our structures here, to that they would not want to make such kind of remittances for the purpose of investment. Right. Certainly not.
Gentlemen, let's put you on hold. I hope when we come back from this short break, we'll have some, bright light, something positive to say about the ministers in the last 1 year. Stay with us.
Well, if you just joined us, you're welcome. You're watching Newsline. And before we went on a break, I had asked Sam Tietie about his reaction to the Minister of Trade and Investment on diaspora funding. Dr. Sam Amadi, I want you to weigh in on that particular comment from the Minister.
Well, I think not just the minister, even the central bank governor, we were having a forex crisis, had hoped on diaspora dollar remittance to help shore up our demand-supply imbalance for forex. So diaspora, from 2011 to 2022, we got average of $20 billion remittances, and in some years maybe 2020, 17 people. We've dropped significantly. This year, the report shows about 6.28% drop that we just reported in terms of what we received. So two things are happening. And again, we expect maybe the global economic conditions also affect remittances. Again, we've seen some improvement in earnings in places like the US, where much of that come from, US, Europe, and Asia. The question then is, two things. How do you increase remittance? And that goes to confidence in the economy, security, a sense of patriotism is important. If you look at the countries that are doing best, India, also, these are countries where the diaspora has a strategic link, that in the ICT, coming to develop, Bangalore, Silicon Valley kind of stuff. And the second issue that Tietie raises is, what are you using this diaspora remittance to? And the notion of Nigerian Diaspora Commission actually is not just about going to talk about who is in prison in Thailand. It's also to help create processes or investment at home, kind of concretize, channel these remittances to strategic investment areas that have good returns both for the diaspora and themselves, as well as help to drive up niche industries that the country wants to invest in. So we're talking about, for example, the digital economy. And this is an area that, not just in terms of the financing, but also the skill sets that we're going to. So I think we need to be intentional in driving up remittances, one. Secondly, in using them to incubate and create new levels of wealth. And that's really the theories of economic growth, and how we cut it, whether we look at the new growth theory, innovation, or that, has an element of capital accumulation. And in this period of leanness, diaspora, well-structured diaspora remittance could help you to seed development enterprises, improve industrialization. And so I think an area to focus on, but you need to have a leadership that inspires trust to diasporans and are able to create an environment and able to nudge those remitters, those who remit these funds, to focus those funds in strategic investment portfolios that are bankable and stable.
Frank Tietie, your thoughts. Let's stay with the Industry, Trade and Investment Minister, Doris Anite. You know, I did ask before I went on the break, are there any encouraging, developments in that sector? Well, let me just read out something here. That the federal government, through the Federal Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment and Bank of Industry, is actually disbursed 50,000 naira grants to nano businesses across all 774 local governments in the country via the presidential conditional cash transfer. That's something, isn't it?
Well, I don't want to appear as if I do not see anything good that is happening. The truth about it is that because I work in the human development sector, I want to see impact in the well-being of Nigerians, and that is actually missing. So it's difficult for me to carry out any form of artificial praise singing just because we need to look for something that is progressive that the minister has done. I would rather, as a lawyer, praise her for acknowledging that there is need to have investment courts, that specialized investment courts that can create confidence in investors, because we know that the justice system, the administration of justice system in our country is not encouraging to investment. But with regards to granting these loans, as in practice, they are more political than economic, than more of investment. They are more of a reward mechanism in our climb, ways of distributing monies to those that are sort of paternalistic, and those persons that are favorably disposed to, that the government is favorably disposed to, or persons who are connected to government. The monitoring has always been bad, whether it's youth empowerment scheme. Various schemes under the Buhari administration didn't really materialize in the reduction of poverty, whereas they just cash that were doled out. I want to see a situation where Nigerians have a sense of maximizing opportunities, and in that case create what we call incentives for small industries, for young people to maximize their talent. Unfortunately, we're not dealing with the ministries that are really connected to those things now. The Trade and Investment Ministry talks about attracting funds. Well, those are funds that the president, as the chief marketer of this country, may have used his visits abroad to attract. They haven't also materialized in tangible projects that can benefit Nigerians. So it's difficult for me to find a way of praising these ministers when we are not seeing that direct impact in improving the well-being of Nigerians after 1 year of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration.
Well, it's not as if Ngozi was asking that you give praise where there's none. She's just asking if there is at least a bright light somewhere. But again, before we go further, let's see if we can take back-to-back two comments from first the minister, the coordinating minister, and that of the blue economy, so that Sam and Tietie can weigh in on that.
Especially at the state level, where the farms are, where the land is, the special agricultural processing zones and other initiatives portend well for increased food production, a better performance by agriculture, which would immediately mean a faster growing economy and an attack on inflation in a substantial manner.
You should allow the private sector that are trained for business to drive business. So what we're looking at is a partnership between perhaps public and private, or private-private. But we need to have a line that will flag our own flag and enjoy the opportunity of not only participating in freight, but even participating in bringing imports to our country.
Right, the Blue Economy Minister there, Boyega Oyetola, former governor of Osun State. Well, he actually projected some $20 billion being pumped in through the Blue Economy into the Nigerian economy and creating 2 million jobs. That was a projection. in your assessment, I mean, Blue Economy Minister, or ministry if you like, has it even been on the radar at all in the last 1 year?
Is that for me? Okay.
Frank Tietie, you want to, who answered the last question? Let me.
That brings Dr. Sam.
Let Dr. Sam Amadi respond to that.
I think since the announcement and appointment, I don't think many Nigerians remember whether there's a blue economy. But again, this is where mismatch happens. The blue economy is an innovative idea. I mean, people have talked about the global economy in the marine, the blue economy as trillions of dollar global economy. And Nigeria, I mean, they're talking about, okay, 20 billion, this and that. But the question is this. You need to first clarity. What are, for example, fisheries? Are they in the blue economy? We talk about part of the mandate. You talk about aqua life, aqua wealth. There's so much in the ocean. We talk about shipping, maritime. It's not about NIMASA. It's about cabotage. It's about strengthening the rules around. Sabakova has shown so much you can make by basically reordering policy. So there's also marine economic governance infrastructure and framework policies. So I want to see the ministers really understand two things. This is not about cashing out already big bread. So there's a NIMASA, okay? This is about how do you create new waves of wealth through policy. You see, the notion of policy is that policy creates wealth. So the marine economy is an economy, but we're not seeing that. For example, renewable energy, there's so much talk around, using the marine economy to drive up renewable energy. So the question is, what's the minister doing about the infrastructure, about the policy support system, about even communicating to Nigerians the boundaries between the traditional Ministry of Transport, okay, traditional Ministry of Agriculture, where does the intersection, which one? So there's lack of clarity. And the last point I would like to make here is, in choosing ministers for what looks like innovative, he may be a great guy, but that's really, I don't think that's a fitting portfolio for where you need to first innovate, and create what doesn't seem to exist. Right, it exists in potential, but we didn't have a Ministry of Blue Economy. We need to create one, and the minister has been missing in action. And most Nigerians probably don't even know that there's a ministry apart from the day it was announced. So for me, a lot more work to be done in the policy side, in enlightenment, and in catalyzing the abundant and potentially abundant wealth that can come from marine and blue economy.
Frank Tietie, unfortunately, I'm not sure you're able to weigh in on this matter. Can we be given 30 seconds for Tietie to weigh in very quickly, if you can?
Well, the Marine and Blue Economy Minister seems to create the impression that there is only one agency like MP, Nigerian Ports Authority, that brings money for Nigeria. My findings show that whatever progress that has been made there is as a result of the exchange rate that has differed, in the sense that Naira has weakened against the dollar. So much of the dollar collections at the ports simply translated to higher the Naira increase in Naira collection. Doesn't mean that he has done much. Again, I've also been able to find out that the marine and blue economy, the reason why it appears to be, probably non-existent is because the processes in the ministry have been quite slow. Memos go in there, take quite unusual time, 2-3 months before they are processed. And so you find persons who are dealing in business of import and export finding it very difficult to, make progress.
We'll have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you very much. Frank Tietie, lawyer, both of you Arise analysts, joining us in assessing the ministers so far. This will definitely continue on Newsnight. Keep an eye here.